a few responses back in. So far, more of them are about immediate families, so that's spouses, children, and parents. And then next up is friends, coworkers, and then third, someone in your extended family. Yeah, and some people thankfully do not know anyone with mental health challenge or illness, and maybe 14% suggest their manager or boss has that mental health issue. Right. So I'm going to give it another few seconds and I'm going to stop the vote.
I think it's not surprising you would know your family members more than you would know the people at work, because even at work, one always respects the confidentiality of the individual. So maybe only the manager and the team know, and it's not shared around as public knowledge. So I'm not surprised at that. But, you know, sometimes even in families, the immediate family will not share it with the extended family, and you don't even know till years later that they've recovered from an event such as postpartum depression, for example. Some people will hide that and not share until later on when they've recovered. Not surprised at. Can you give the results then, Julie or Jenny?
Do you have the results there, Jenny?
Okay.
Yeah. So 75% of the participants. How many folks do we have that have joined, Jenny? Can you see?
Around 9, sorry, excluding Julie, that would be 8. So everyone voted, yeah.
So thank you. So 75% indicated immediate family. 25% someone in your extended family. 63% a friend. Coworkers were 50%, and as you were mentioning, Hilda, a lot of people may not know because there is that stigma that affects people. In privacy and confidentiality. 13% reported knowing a manager or boss, and 13% said that they didn't know of anyone who is experiencing a mental health challenge.
Well, thank you for joining us today. You obviously have an interest in knowing more about workplace wellness, and I'm really fortunate to have Julie Holden here with me. Jenny Ho is also online. She is coordinating the session today. So if you have any questions that you would like to put into the chat box, I'm encouraging people to use the chat box, but if you want to be more private about it, send it to Jenny as she's monitoring. So thank you everybody for joining us today. We're talking about episode 28 of how to optimize workplace wellness in challenging times. We started this webinar series in March of 2020, a week after in Ontario we went into social isolation. And we did it to be helping companies to help managers, business owners, and HR decision makers to really navigate through the very tough times, particularly in the beginning, and to provide tips and strategies to help you get through COVID-19. If you like us, tag us at PeopleBright or hashtag COVID-19 TDBO. I'd like to give special acknowledgement to the East Gwillimbury Chamber of Commerce. They have been sponsoring our session since June, and usually we get a message sent to you from them, but unfortunately the person, Lauren Davis, is not able to make it. She's the ED of the East Gwillimbury Chamber of Commerce. So a little bit about myself, and then I'll introduce my guest, Julie Holden. I am the founder and president of PeopleBright Consulting. We provide full service HR consulting, and I'm the creator of what's called the Connect with RevUp concept. I'm actually doing a leadership people management skills training on that, and I'm very, very passionate about creating healthy workplaces. My husband and I had our own engineering company, and we actually were recognized by the Great Workplace as one of the best workplaces in Canada. We were top 10 twice. And I've been a serial entrepreneur for 20 plus years and in HR for that long. I am the host of a new podcast called Rev Up Your Potential with Hilda Gann. Each week we bring on your entrepreneur next door, talking about the struggles and the successes behind their abilities to manage their business. So if you're interested, do look it up and join us. I'd like now to introduce my guest this week, Julie Holden of Holden and Associates Consulting. Julie is the principal there, and her specialization is workplace mental health, absence and disability management strategies, health and productivity solutions, and she takes a holistic approach to managing disabilities, looking at the employer, the employee, and the provider. She has an extensive and impressive background delivering health and productivity solutions. Previously, she's been the assistant VP at Manulife, a principal at Willis Towers, Watson, etc. And she is a contributor to the 14th edition of the Handbook of Canadian Pension and Benefit Plans disability section. So she is wealth of knowledge, and I'm really pleased to have her here to help me talk more about the mental health aspects and how to create a healthy workplace. So Julie, please add anything else you need about yourself, and let us know some of your information and hot tips.
Well, thanks very much, Hilda. Thanks for inviting me today. I really appreciate it, and it's a pleasure to be here. I look forward to learning more about the guests as well, and hearing what they're experiencing during this time. It's really great that you've done this this series for them, for folks, especially going all the way back to when this started in March, because it's certainly a trying time for everyone, to say the least. So. Yeah, I've been working in this industry for over 25 years. And when I say this industry, it's disability management and workplace, workplace wellness, but my focus is really on mental health. And as we'll see, I've got a few statistics in that just to lay the groundwork and set the stage sort of for where we're at with mental health. But you'll see that disability management or disabilities in the workplace represent 70% of the costs of all disability claims now, and they are on the rise due to COVID-19. So these two elements do really coexist together, trying to keep people healthy, both while they're at work and then during their time, and if they go on disability, trying to get them back. So in any event, I look forward to the session, and yeah, let's take a look at the next screen. Let me see here. I can't seem to move it. I will. Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's look at some of these. Sorry about that. Let's take a look at the prevalence of mental illness. And we saw from the poll that 75% of people attending here today do know someone. So if we just go back the slide, I can't seem to, it says I've got remote control, but it's not letting me move it. So I apologize. Okay, so who's affected here? So 1 in 5 Canadians will experience a mental illness or issue in any year. That's an awful lot of people. And actually there's another statistic that's 1 in 3 Canadians will experience a mental challenge or illness in their lifetime. This is all pre-COVID, by the way. I do have a little bit of more updated information, but I mean, these statistics haven't changed officially yet. But really, the Mental Health Commission of Canada and CAMH, that you're probably maybe familiar with, they're saying that almost everyone is affected now, because even if it's not yourself, it is a loved one or a colleague or a friend or someone. So, I mean, this is a lot of people who are affected. It's astonishing that it's actually over 500,000 Canadians miss work every week. In any week of the year because of mental illness. We hear different things like I'm taking a mental health day or I'm taking a stress day. And it's actually healthy to do that from time to time. Some people, are off though for extended periods and are really unable to go to work. It's everywhere. It's in all cultures. It's in, different age groups and education and, income levels. It doesn't discriminate. So mental illness affects us all. As I mentioned about disabilities a couple minutes ago, 1 in 3 disability claims are mental health related, and it represents 70% of the cost because they are more complex. If you think about it, you know, someone who has a fracture, you know, you can sort of predict the outcome unless there are some serious complications, and they'll be off for 6 to 8 weeks or something like that. You know how to accommodate. Mental health disability claims are more complex and a little more difficult, although not impossible for sure. There's lots of things that can be done, and so, but they do represent 70% of the cost. We've probably all heard the term burnout, maybe even used it from time to time over the years. It was never, it was not recognized as an official category by the World Health Organization or anywhere, but it now is. It was about a year ago or a year and a half ago now that the World Health Organization is recognizing burnout as an official classification. And it's resulting from workplace stress. So it's not something at home and then, you know, you call it that. It's actually as a result of the workplace. So that was a significant new category. And I think we're all seeing these kinds of things around us in the workplace. Now there is good news. There is a lot that can be done, and at least 70% of people recover from a mental illness, and get back to a healthy lifestyle, which includes work. So that is good news, and there is a lot that can be done. Okay, so we'll go over to the next slide. I'm still unable to do this, so I won't waste time. So what we see when we talk about mental illnesses, you know, what is that? We hear some more extreme, you know, schizophrenia and things like that. But in the workplace, and it can be in the workplace, we typically see depression and anxiety. And so the technical terms are major depressive disorder, that's depression. And then on the other side, it's general anxiety disorder. We also see, you've probably seen first responders in particular, that suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder and PTSD. There we go. Thank you. And so PTSD, we've heard of in, you know, police and firefighters and other, you know, the nurses at the front lines right now. I mean, probably are suffering and will suffer from PTSD as time goes on. Hilda, what are you seeing? Is this what you're experiencing?
I think in the workplaces you get a variety, mostly depression or anxiety.
Yes,
for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Some people, so social phobia, what's a social phobia? You may see someone at work that, I mean, in the before times, when we were there physically, or most people were there physically, you know, you may have a gathering and maybe you're celebrating someone's birthday or something like that, and there's someone that doesn't, you know, come and participate. Well, they may actually have a social phobia. They don't like the crowds. They don't like all the gathering together and that kind of thing. They may not be, you know, just antisocial for no good reason. They may actually have an illness. I've actually experienced a panic disorder or a panic situation. I can't really drive on highways. So in the spirit of sharing, if I'm on, I can go on certain ones where there's just like 3 lanes or whatever. But if it's those great big like 401 or 400 series where you got like 8 or 10 or whatever more, I can't drive on them, so I don't. So I've experienced that. It's the only thing is that I have, but it's awful. I think was there did I see a chat come up? Someone made a comment, but I didn't catch it.
Actually, John also said maybe autism, Asperger's syndrome should be also on one of these lists.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point. There's a whole spectrum, and these are the most common. But yes, absolutely, those are also experienced and seen in the workplace. Thank you. Okay, let's. Okay. So how is COVID-19 affecting our mental health? So we talked about, pre-COVID, and those statistics haven't changed officially. Um, but let's go back. Okay, the thing is flipping around a little bit. I was going to talk about the COVID-19, the effects that it's having. If we could go back to that slide. Thank you. So a recent study, this is by Morneau Chappelle actually, 81% of Canadian workers reported that the pandemic is negatively affecting them, their mental health. I mean, that's really high, 81%. And if we think about it, it's not just the illness itself, like we're worried about becoming ill. We're also worried about the health and welfare of our family, our kids, our parents who may be in a long-term care home, and there's been a lot of unfortunate things happening there, and a lot of illness and deaths. So, I mean, it's a lot to worry about. Some people are experiencing things like they're not sleeping, they're lonely, they're working from home and they're not used to working from home. So they may not have, where are all my tools that I'm used to, and they're kind of, fumbling through some things, especially a little earlier on. But even still, it's a little daunting for folks. And there are some folks that really enjoy working from home. And it'd be interesting actually to understand the people that are on this session, how they're dealing with working from home, if that's the case. Sometimes you think that everyone wants, it'd be great to work from home, but it's not suited to everyone. And some people really need that interaction and going in and seeing their colleagues on a regular basis. So this is all affecting us all. They're either, people are doing, parents, they've got their kids at home. They're homeschooling, they're not used to it. They're not used to doing that and having to work and run their home at the same time. Or they're worried about them getting ill if they do go to school. We talked about disability claims and the fact that they are on the rise for anxiety and depression mainly. And as a result, there's a lot of managers out there, people who have teams, and they're not sure how to recognize someone who's struggling and really not sure what to do to help them. So we'll talk about some of that today. And but these are some of the things that people are coping with as a result of COVID-19. So let's talk about stigma for a moment. So stigma is a form of discrimination, and it's really a serious barrier, as it says there, not only for people to get a diagnosis, but to go and get the treatment that they need. Like some people just don't want to say that they have that they're struggling mentally, and so they don't get the care they need, which of course they either stay the same depending on what they have, or they get worse. So it's very difficult. It is invisible. We don't see it. Although, I mean, if you think of it, some other diseases, physical diseases, or chronic illnesses, they can be invisible as well, but they don't seem to have the same stigma. Do you see that, Hilda? Or
yeah. I mean, we're going to talk about it later, about the stigma, and what we mean by later is Julie and I will have a dialogue, but we are welcoming other people to have that dialogue with us today.
Absolutely. Yeah, so it is hidden, but there's also inner versus external stigma. So when we're talking about external, we are talking about other people stigmatizing us, or, we're afraid that they will. When we talk about inner, it's that, that little voice inside that, we sometimes have that's very negative and says, oh, I can't do this, or, I'm not good enough, or I'm not as good as this person, or, I'm a phony, or whatever it is. And those awful messages that we say to ourselves, or I have this anxiety and I shouldn't have it. Everyone else can cope. Why can't I? We stigmatize ourselves sometimes, and that is very, very dangerous. And it's very prevalent, unfortunately. So we have to tell that little voice inside to be quiet and not listen if possible. So funding, another thing that shows stigma a little bit or demonstrates it is that the government doesn't fund mental illness to the same extent that the funding for physical programs and hospitals and care and everything is. So it's not at parity, and it is coming up. And there's been some more funds recently attributed to mental health, but it's not where it should be. So that's, you wonder why it really should be. So I think we're going to do another a poll now, our second poll.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jenny. So what are some of the reasons that would prevent you from letting your manager know that you are struggling with mental health challenges or illness or an illness? Some people don't want to let their boss or their manager know. And if that's the case, what are some of those reasons? If you want to just take a minute to answer that.
And you answer all that apply. So just keep checking them off. Thank you. So Julie, are you still having trouble with the control of the slides, or is that working for you now?
It seems to be going back and forth. Let me, if I click on it now though, now that the poll's up, Jenny, will that do anything? Should I be able to move it now?
Yeah, you should be able to. It wouldn't affect things.
Yep. Let me try.
You're moving it and can see
Yep.
that.
Yep. Thank you.
So how's the poll going, Jenny?
It's going good. People are voting in. I think the majority are actually saying privacy reasons. They aren't feeling comfortable letting others know. And then second is the stigma that is associated with mental health, so it goes with what Julie is saying. The rest are kind of varying.
So
are we ready to close that poll? Sorry?
Are we ready to close the poll now and show the results to everybody?
Sure.
Okay, so we have, I would have no concerns telling my managers only 14%, which is not surprising, which is too bad though, isn't it? I mean, we have to change the culture in workplaces so that it's not, people don't have those concerns to the same.
I think the thing is that as a company, they have a duty to accommodate an illness. So whether it's a physical or a mental, they're bound by law to be able to accommodate you, but they can't accommodate if they don't know. And so this is that dilemma, is that there are reasons why you may not want to tell people, but there are benefits to sharing. But go ahead and finish the rest of the results, Julie.
Absolutely. Okay. And then 57% said is the stigma associated with mental health. 29% afraid to lose my job. 86% privacy reasons. I don't feel comfortable letting others know. And that I think goes back somewhat to perhaps the stigma and some of the other things. Ashamed to have a mental health challenge or illness, 14%. And I know that is, I didn't tell people about my panic thing when I drive for a long time, but I've started sharing that. But yeah, it's like you don't want to tell people because there's something wrong with it, but there isn't anything wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with it whatsoever. It's the same as having a physical illness. Afraid that I will be watched closely for any performance concerns, 43%, and 29% lack of trust in my boss. Yeah.
Any lack of trust in the company or afraid of a bad reaction from others? No.
That's that. Yeah, I mean, we could probably talk a lot more about this, and hopefully later we will and open it up for everyone's comments, because it's such a serious issue. Okay, moving on. Mental illness signs and symptoms. So here's just a few. You might either feel it yourself or see it in someone on your team. If you have a team, someone suddenly irritable where they're not usually. I mean, a lot of people are feeling a little irritable these days, rightly so with what's going on. I mean, I won't read them all out, but certainly sadness, poor concentration, I know I've had the odd day where it's like, okay, I can't seem to focus. I can't seem to, do what I normally do. So poor concentration. And, there's degrees of that. So some people are much worse, feeling that. Certainly fatigued. Sleeping. A lot of people are having problems sleeping. And if I were in the room, I'd say, put your hand up if you're having problems sleeping, because we could still do that. Because I'm using a sleep app and it works really great. So, but I was having some problems sleeping, but that works really well for me. Suicidal thoughts, unfortunately. Over 4,000 Canadians die by suicide every year. And, we have to watch our words too. We used to say commit suicide, but we don't say that because it's not appropriate. It's people commit murder, or they commit adultery perhaps, but people die by suicide, or they lose their battle with depression, that kind of thing. Helplessness, eating change. People are eating differently sometimes now, or if they have a mental illness. They're not taking care of themselves. So these are some of the things that are some of the signs, and they're signs that you may want to get some help, or if you see someone experiencing these things, then maybe offer some help. And then how does it show up at work? I mean, some of this can apply to the home as well, but certainly at work you see maybe some conflicts. People that were usually, easy to get along with, they're good in teams, they're good to work with, are suddenly getting into conflicts with people. That's certainly a sign that something is not right. Seeing that change, avoidance, avoiding people, like I know a lot of people are getting together on Zoom or whatever it is these days, for get-togethers and work functions and things like that. So some people just opt out all the time and not participate. So they're really isolating themselves. Again, I'm not going to read all of these, but increased errors. So, you've got someone who does pretty good work, they check their work, and it's not perfect, of course, but it's usually pretty good, not very many errors. And then suddenly it's late, it's, not very good, it's not well thought out, it's not the usual work that they would do. So again, it's that change in behavior that you see that indicates that there's something wrong, and the person or yourself may need some help. We've got neglect. That can be even in appearance. Maybe someone is usually, dressed appropriately for their workplace. They're taking care of themselves. They look like they're, leading a fairly healthy lifestyle. And suddenly they're not. They're all disheveled looking. They're, again, the work is not where it should be. You may feel that they could be on a substance, just from the way they're talking or acting. So those are some of the things in terms of how it shows up in the workplace. Any comments there, Hilda?
Yeah, just to reinforce what you said is these are, when you're looking at potential for mental illness, is to look at the normal functioning that person had, and suddenly things are not happening, and these are some of those functions that may not be there. And so the opportunity to kind of talk to a person, say, hey, I know you've always been so punctual, you bring things and do it on time. Lately I've noticed you're a little bit late, and sometimes the errors that are happening are increasing. Do you want to talk about it? So you open it up with factual information of a before performance and a current performance, and have that discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and then I think maybe that's the end. Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry.
You're flipping through all these slides.
Oh, I'm going through. I'm sorry.
No worries. I think we want to have some discussion, and if you have any thoughts, do put them in the chat line, if you're more comfortable putting in a chat. But one of the things that we need to realize is that COVID-19 has really, really hit us hard. And we're now in a situation where it's not just a 2-week blip. A crisis happens, a tsunami, and he hits, an area, or a a tropical storm hits with a hurricane force, and people are managing and they're recovering. But there's a finite time to that. Right now, we're 7 months into COVID-19, and we still don't even know when it's going to end. And add to that the fact that we've got other things. We've got the fact that Black Lives Matter has become, something that is pressing upon our thoughts about how is that happening, not just in the US, but in Canada as well. We've got the Me Too movement, workplace harassment. And whether you want to admit it or not, we're all thinking about the election. So the shadows are of people but I won't mention who they are, with people going back to work and back to school. That impact has really pressed. And one of the things that business owners and companies need to think about is that how is that affecting the employer, the employee, and then the benefits that are provided or not provided to the organization? Regardless of size, small or big, we are all impacted by so many stresses right now. And I personally am finding that when September turned around the corner, you could almost feel it, that people were less motivated. I've heard so many clients and colleagues and friends talk about how they've got more days where they don't feel motivated. They don't want to do stuff. Their anxiety level is up. So the things that Julie talked about from a mental health function, I'm seeing happen. And I've seen it hit hard really in the month of September. So one of the things that Julie and I want to do with the rest of the time that we have is to really talk about these challenging times and how do you optimize workplace wellness. And we're going to talk about awareness and stigma, because that is so important. Even though we are trying to raise awareness now, and Bell Talks is helping raise awareness in so many people, there is still that stigma. So Julie and I want to have that discussion, but we want to open it for discussion as we talk. We want to also talk about creating healthy, safe workplaces. And from a workplace wellness, it's about feeling safe, safe to talk about mental health, mental illness, and disabilities. And then the last thing we want to do is wrap up with access to supportive programs, what suggestions we can offer to you that are inexpensive, as well as those that cost. And we welcome people to put into the chat line things that they're doing, or to come forward and unmute yourself. So I'm going to turn off the share right now, and we're going to start by talking about awareness. So you and I, Julie, stigma is such a big thing that we would love to kind of take out of the vocabulary of humankind. Do you
Absolutely.
want to start the conversation? And feel free, people, to just chime in.
Yeah, I mean, I see study after study, Hilda, where people are, indicating that they are not comfortable letting their employer know that they have a mental illness or issue or challenge, whatever words we want to use. And it's so disheartening because if someone has a physical illness, people will offer help. They'll say, can I get you something? How are you doing? And they'll get them a chair. They'll do the simple little things, if they see that someone is struggling. But if someone has a mental illness, they're afraid to disclose. And people actually, on the flip side, don't know what to say to somebody. Like, unfortunately, often they don't have the words. They don't know, because of the stigma, they don't know what to say to the person. Whereas they don't have that typically if it's a physical illness.
Well, I would beg to differ on the physical illness too, because people, they say I've got cancer. Oh, well, I had somebody and they recovered fine.
Yeah.
That is not
True.
what you need to say. So I would beg to differ
Yeah.
that people don't know how to have those difficult, awkward conversations to be more substantive and meaningful. So I agree with you. I had a cousin who told me and I was so depressed. And years later, I realized that wasn't just idle chatter. Like,
Right.
was truly in a depressive state, and she was on medications, but she couldn't tell me, and I just thought she was just saying it. And this was the days before we were really raising conscious awareness of stigma. But
Yeah.
it's very awkward. People are afraid, and people are not as comfortable. You and I had some discussion yesterday when we were preparing, and we were talking about the different generations and how maybe different generations are more comfortable or less comfortable about talking about the mental health
Yeah.
and mental illness. And I raised the idea that I think the Gen Zs and even the millennials to some extent are much more comfortable and open about that.
Yes.
That's a natural thing. Being good days, bad days, and episodes where you have a really acute episode of mental health and mental illness is there. I'd like to open that up for discussion. What do people think about stigma, and where you know, is there a generational thing? Are people more comfortable in certain generations than others?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to hear what others have experienced or seen or think around that.
I think as a millennial, I don't see a lot of people talking about depression. It does, there is still some sort of stigma on it, I find.
Mm.
Yeah, like people joke around about depression, and it is a little bit more open. People tend to like maybe come out more, but like when it in terms of like the serious issues, right? Like even very major depressive orders or something, or even eating disorders. I know a few friends. I only found out like maybe 5-10 years later, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like they weren't very comfortable speaking about it like in public.
Yeah, because there's still that stigma.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, people use the word stress a lot. You know, I'm stressed. I'm so stressed. Like a lot of people will say that, I find, not really recognizing that stress is a symptom of anxiety. So it's really a symptom of anxiety disorder. But, you know, it depends on the level of stress too, because a little bit of stress is okay and it's not a problem at all. But when it's chronic and severe, you know, it is a disorder at that point. But people often will use that word to describe how they're feeling. Jenny or Hilda, I think yesterday we were also saying that we see it in, like a lot of people have come forward. There's musicians, there's Olympians, you know, there's all sorts of, there's CEOs, Ted Turner, all sorts of people that have come forward, and even like younger musicians that you would think it would help open it up for people to feel comfortable. But it is still very prevalent. And the more we talk about it, and the more we talk about it in workplaces, you know, hopefully that's going to really have a positive impact over time.
I think it's important for people who are in key roles, like managers, like the business owner, and like human resources, to really understand and help open the dialogue for talking about mental health, mental illness, because by having those discussions, people start to learn how to have those awkward moment discussions and to talk to people about that. I want to make sure we keep moving on. I'm cognizant of our time, and I want to let you know that we will stay on, you know, for 15 minutes afterwards. We've kind of talked about health safety and want to talk about access to supportive programs. But I know people have questions here, and I don't know whether we should answer those or answer those after we have this little bit of access to supportive programs. Maybe Julie, if you can talk about some of those supportive programs, and at 10:45 we can wrap up and then answer some of these questions.
Yeah. So thank you. I mean, there's a lot out there. There are online virtual access to virtual care programs that are very prevalent now. Some of them at no cost, and some of them, you know, are through an employer. I mean, the first step is always to look to see what your employer offers, or you know, if you're the employer, to see what you're offering and what you can offer to your employees. But there's a lot of benefits that sometimes a person doesn't know they have. As an employee, you sign up, you get your benefit book or whatever when you start, and then you sort of forget what it was, or where's that 1-800 number for the EAP. And there are some things available, and it's just a matter of learning what that is and how you can access those. um, there are a lot of different programs. I mentioned, there's lots of apps that are available. um, some of them are no charge. Some of them, you can pay that extra to get more functionality. But they are helping people in terms of working out at home, um, and staying active, those kinds of things, doing hobbies for your mental health, and sleeping, those kinds of things. It's so important to try to maintain good health, which really translates and helps mental health, like good physical health, I mean. So eating healthy, and getting some physical exercise goes so far in terms of impacting positive mental health. And there's tons of stuff out there. And, you can learn anything these days online. I just sent away, because I want to limit my screen time a little bit, because that's not healthy to always be surfing and carrying on. I sent away for a knitting kit. So I'm going to take up knitting, or I'm going to try. But trying to maintain those hobbies and seeing what's available at your employer. And some employers have great programs that are at no cost for their employees, aside from benefits. So the first thing is look to see what benefits are available, look to see what is available in your community, often at no cost, because there are a lot of things. And also look to your own self for your own mental health through taking care of yourself, and hobbies and fitness and those kinds of things. But in terms of other things employers are doing, like I've suggested to some, you can have a walking group. And even if you're not walking together, you can take your phone or whatever and take pictures of things and, show them, hey, look at this, along my walk. And you're all going for a walk at, whatever time of day, 11:30 till 12 or something. And it's something you're doing together, and it's team building, and it's fun, and it's no cost. So there are things like that. Peer support programs is another really good one that organizations can put in place, when that's where someone who has lived experience with a mental illness, wants to help someone else who is struggling, and so they become peers, and they work through that together. So there are a lot of different resources, and we can certainly provide more specifics on that if that would be helpful.
I know that in the past, when we were actually live, I'll call it, I think it could happen virtually now, is a lot of the communities would open themselves up for speaking freely. So your public health department,
Yeah.
there may be nutritionists out there so that can give virtual sessions to your internal staff. So these are things that you can think of that are cost effective and free. I recognize the time now, so I would like to officially just kind of sign off by giving you a little bit of information and then answering some of these questions, because I think some of them are really good. So I'm hoping people can stay online. But let me just share the last few slides with you here. And I just want to share with you our upcoming webinars. And what we have, I'll just point out the two of them. We do our sessions Tuesdays and Thursdays from 10, second and fourth Tuesdays of the month at 10 o'clock. The next one upcoming is mental exhaustion. October is our mental health month here at People Bright. And I'm going to talk about how to refeel, because I think this is really important. I also want to point out to you that we are doing a training series to help managers and business owners in particular rev up your people management skills. I think we've talked today so much about mental health and how people find it difficult to speak with others. This will really help you manage with confidence and communicate to build effective resiliency in your workplace. It is a 4-week virtual training program for an hour and a half each day for 4 weeks. So I'd like to share that with you. I'd like to thank the East Gwillimbury Chamber of Commerce for being our sponsors. And I would like to point out that you can get all of the sessions available to you through YouTube channel, and Jenny will be sending you an email of today's session. So thank you very much for joining us. I would like to then open it up for us to respond to these questions that have come about. So the first one is, what is best practice on how to help a coworker who's having a panic attack? And then if they have to leave work, what's the best method of transportation? Should we have an internal policy, and what would the title be?
Okay, so that's a great question. So yeah, the first thing I'll say is the Canadian Mental Health Association has a program called Mental Health First Aid, and it's excellent. And the program goes over exactly those kinds of things, like how to respond in different situations if you're facing sort of an acute situation around a mental illness at work, and not just acute, but something like this. So I really recommend that program. Another thing, though, I would say is it depends on the severity. I mean, if it's so when I had a panic attack, I was able to calm myself down eventually, and I was okay. I got off the highway. And so I could do that. So it would depend on the severity. If someone is having an attack where they're not able to really, they're not in control of themselves, and they're at an acute stage, I would call an ambulance, and I would have the medical professionals manage the person, help the person. But if it is, if it's a person that you can talk to, and they're saying, okay, no, I'm okay now, and whatever, if you're getting a response sort of like that, I would think they'd be okay. You might want to call a friend or a relative or a spouse to come and pick them up to make sure they get home safely. So in my opinion, I would think that it depends on the level of what's happening there. I haven't really seen a policy specific to something like that. I mean, it's all around accommodating someone in the workplace, as Hilda said earlier, whether they're still in the workplace or they're coming back to the workplace. But if they need assistance, I don't think that really applies here in this case. So I really can't think of a policy around that other than just first aid, like, a real mental health first aid type of thing. But Hilda, what are your comments?
A couple of things. When people are having a panic attack, the focus is really trying to help them gain some sense of control over the anxiety. Yeah. And just even for simple thing for everybody is breathe.
Breathe.
To breathe and say, okay, match my breathing. Okay, take a big breath in now, blow it out slowly, and then you start doing it. And that sometimes is enough to get them from way up there downward and start to focus on present. Because sometimes that panic attack is due to something that has created a trauma. And there is a thing called trauma-informed practice. But the simplest thing for you guys is breathe. Never let the person drive home by themselves. Make sure, get them in a cab, somebody takes them home or whatever. As far as an internal policy, you can't write everything in the book for every possibility. And this particular possibility is about teaching people how to manage awkward, difficult conversations. And that's something that I do. I actually do a training program on that, and we'll be doing that in that 4-week program, is to teach people, teach managers how to handle difficult conversations and how to be supportive and caring. So that would be my answer for you, Elizabeth. I hope we've answered that. If you have any questions, you can come forward, but we will move on to the next question. Are you okay, Elizabeth? Did we answer what you needed? Okay. Well, we'll move on. I think this one's very interesting as well. And John, thank you for asking this. Interesting, the environment today is, from my perspective, let's blame white people for all the problems in the world. I'm not very optimistic these days. And it's out there. So thank you for asking that question, and feel free to comment as well. Julie, do you want to respond?
I have heard this, certainly. And yeah, it's a really challenging time. Of course, I don't have I don't have an answer for it. It is very, it's a difficult time, in the country, not just in the US, but in Canada as well. And it is causing a lot of stress for people, and, lack of optimism, as John is mentioning there, which is really unfortunate. I think I have heard other white people say that. I don't feel that way myself. So I don't know how to respond more than that.
I think there are some of my friends who are white and saying, I get it now in terms of, you can feel defensive about this, and I totally get that. What they're saying is, when it comes to Black Lives Matter, they were saying it isn't just good enough for me to say I support diversity, I treat people with equality. It's learning how to be anti-racism. Like, rather than it's more of a, instead of a passive approach to saying I'm a good person and I believe in the equality of all, is that I will stand up for situations where there is, an injustice or something that's happening. Um, I know, John, you also had a question about, interesting, Julie, you haven't mentioned autism, Asperger's syndrome, and society excludes those of us who are on that spectrum. So, John, do you want to comment on this and the other chat that you created? Thank you, John, for coming forward and sharing, your perspective, in a variety of ways, as you've already mentioned, and I really appreciate that. I am cognizant of the time, and I know that we said we would go to 11, so we're a little bit past that now.
Yep.
So thank you, everybody, for joining us today, and for those that have stayed on to the end to talk about some, you know, experiences that some of you as individuals are having too. So I really appreciate that, and thank you very much. So have a good day, and if you like us, again, put it on the on Twitter and on the chat box. Sorry, not the chat box, on Twitter, and please join us for more topics as we continue our webinar series. Thank you. Thank you, Fernanda, for the big clap, and we will sign off now. Thank you. Bye.
Thank
Thanks.
you, everyone. Thanks, Hilda.